When you're scoring music to picture within your digital audio workstation, you're typically working with some combination of music tracks, which include software instruments, audio tracks with recorded instruments, and effects tracks such as reverb and delay, and movie audio tracks, which include tracks for dialogue and sound effects. The audio for all these tracks work their way through the internal routing of your DAW until they arrive at their final destination, your master bus. The audio then leaves your DAW, feeding your speakers or headphones. In the simplest routing, the audio travels directly from the individual tracks to the master bus without any stops along the way. If we look at this configuration in Logic, you'll see that by default, Logic sets the output of every single track to stereo out, which is the label it uses for the master bus. In other words, the audio from each track is traveling directly to the master bus. Your master bus channel controls, among other things, the volume for everything that goes through it. Turn up the volume fader on your master bus channel and all the audio gets louder. Turn it down and all the audio gets quieter. But this isn't ideal when you're scoring music to picture. What you really want are two additional volume faders, one for the music and one for the movie audio, that allow you to control the volume of each independently. And for that, we need to create two additional buses and aux tracks. A bus is a single point in the signal flow of your DAW that sums together all the audio that passes through it. As you probably guessed by its name, the master bus is a bus. And technically, a bus is just an internal summing point. It doesn't have any controls such as volume and pan or insert slots for effects plugins. That's what channel strips do. So the master bus is actually a combination of a bus and a channel strip. This bus-channel strip combination is a special thing reserved for final outputs. When we create additional buses in our DAW, we need to also create corresponding channel strips called auxiliary tracks, or just aux tracks. Buses and aux tracks go hand in hand. You send audio from a track, through a bus, and into an aux track. The output of that aux track can go anywhere, but for our example, we'll just set it to go right to the master bus. In Logic, that looks like this. Suppose we have 4 music tracks and 2 movie audio tracks. We'll start with one of the music audio tracks and change its output from stereo out to a bus. You'll see that there are many buses to choose from. In my system, I can select from bus 1 all the way to bus 256. There's no difference between any of these buses. They're all just available routes you can use. So I'll select bus 1, but you can use any bus you want. You'll see that Logic immediately creates a new aux track called aux1 and sets its input to bus 1. And note that it's called aux1 because it's our first aux track, not because we used bus 1. If we had used bus 200, the aux track would still be named aux1. If your DAW doesn't automatically create an aux track, just manually create one and set its input to whatever bus you selected. Before we go any further, let's rename our aux track because aux1 is not very descriptive. Control or right-click on the channel and select Rename Channel Strip from the drop-down menu. Let's name this channel Music, since we're going to set the outputs of all our music tracks here. Now let's send the outputs of the rest of our music tracks to this Music aux channel. Notice that now when we select bus 1, it shows the routing to our music aux track. Now we just need to do the same thing for our movie audio. Select the output of the first movie audio track and select an unused bus. I'll select bus 2. I'll rename the aux track it just created to movie. And finally, set the output of my second movie audio track to bus 2, which will route it to the movie aux track. Your DAW should set the output of the 2 aux tracks to your master bus by default, but just double check that that's the case. If it's not, just click their outputs and select stereo out. Now, if you need to reduce the volume of the music as a whole in relation to the movie audio, which you likely will need to do, it's simply a matter of turning down the volume fader of the music aux track. This keeps whatever mix you had using the individual track faders intact. And when it's time to bounce out a music-only mix, you can just mute the movie aux track, turn your music aux track to Unity by option-clicking it, and go. This will make your composing and mixing life much easier, but do remember that for any additional tracks you create, you'll need to change their outputs from stereo out to your music or movie bus, although I'll give you a helpful tip about this in the next video.